institute, a training program institute. But why land? Why so much focus on land? For many rural communities, land is the only gift that they have that is both the source of income but also a source of identity, where land connects the living now to the past generation and ancestors, also to the future. So land is not just economic, but land is also a spiritual reality in Africa. And the deep connectedness to the land in Africa has, for many years, been a point of that one. Yes, that one for Africans. Where many people have looked at this as a point of animism, atheism. And so there is within the kind of the modern ideological outlook trend that kind of makes Africans, as our sister from Brazil was speaking, kind of really at ease because they are so deeply connected with the soil. So we want to really to recover that deep spirituality that connects to the soil, but also connects to the human vocation of tilling the earth, of caring for the land, and God's own love for the earth, for the soil. With the promise that if you take care of the land, of the soil in sustainable ways, the soil will take care of you. So that's why we call our trainees caretakers. But why Bethany? We call it Bethany Land Institute. It's because we wanted to connect it with the image and the stories from Bethany in the New Testament. I wrote a small book, and I think it should be there with the Paulines, Stories from Bethany, reflecting the research that I did in the Holy Land on Bethany and why it's so significant in Jesus' time. Jesus always stayed at Bethany with the friends Martha, Mary, Lazarus, Simon the leper, and others. In Jesus' time, Bethany was a place of the poor. That's the name, Bethany, Beit Ane, house of the poor. But that is where Jesus always stayed, at home among the poor. So this initiative is in the poor rural communities. It's an initiative of the poor, for the poor, and with the poor. But at Bethany, we see also a number of interesting characters that kind of reflect the kind of ethos that we want to create. Like Martha, who had her own house and welcomed Jesus. Like Mary, who was sitting down and listening and later on did the anointing. Lazarus, who died and was brought back to life. So we have 3 programs at Bethany Land Institute, appropriately named after the characters of Bethany. We have Mary's farm, after Mary, who sat down and listened, who is a model disciple. This is the Agricultural Training Institute, a program of learning to listen to the soil, but also to listen to God, to listen to oneself, and to listen to one another, that kind of spirituality. So that is Mary's farm. Then we have the Lazarus trees of forest. We have a natural forest that we are reclaiming and replanting. That is the ecological base for a major reforestation effort in the community, with a target of planting at least 1 million trees by the year 2050 by the caretakers. And the vision, the story of Lazarus, who was sick, who died, but was brought back to life. The ecology is sick, is dying, and our effort is a way to resurrect the ecology. Then we have Martha's Market. That is the economic dimension, like Martha, who welcomed Jesus in her own house, a woman in this poor village who had her own house. The sense of household management, economics, the leadership. This is all under Martha's Market, where we teach young people entrepreneurial skills and skills of leadership. And already at Martha's Market, there is a savings and credit union for the young people that kind of helps them to save but also use some of those proceeds to set up their own farms in the community. So this is the program at Bethany Land Institute that started a year ago, but we are doing the launch of this program, the public launch, in over a week's time on the 29th of July. So I want to invite everyone to come to Uganda, to Bethany Land Institute on the 29th of July for the formal public launch of the program. But also invite you to check us out on our website, Bethany Land Institute, one word, .org. That's what we do. So briefly, the final third element of my reflection is about the synodality, what we are learning as we are engaged in this work with the poor, the rural communities, and with the land, what we are learning in terms of synodality. Four elements that emerge that are prominent. One is in terms of working together with creation, but also with the poor. The cry of the earth and the cry of the poor go hand in hand, as Pope Francis reminds us. You cannot just be concerned about the ecology if you are not concerned about the poor. Especially here in Africa, that needs to be highlighted, that coming together, journeying together, working together, a concern for creation and a concern for the poor. The second element that we are learning relating to synodality is the journey of integral ecology. As we read Laudato Si, and we see that integral ecology is the organizing principle of the whole of Laudato Si, we realize that integral ecology is not a finished product. Out of Laudato Si, what we get is not a blueprint that then we can implement. Rather, what we get out of Laudato Si is an invitation into integral ecology. How that looks like is not really given, it's not really determined. It's, so to say, an invitation for each one of us to try out integral ecology. And in the process, we may have so many mishaps in that trying out. This is one of the lessons that I'm learning as we started working on this initiative. We are really walking onto an unknown path. Wish it were just a blueprint that we could just implement. But it's kind of an inviting us into connecting with the earth and with the poor. And when we do so, discovering the many dimensions that are necessary, that are needed to respond to that. One of the dimensions, for example, that I'm discovering that has been part of our work, a challenging and daunting task, is in a way the formation of institutions, how institutions matter. It is easy to give humanitarian aid, but to form institutions that carry forward the progress and the gains of one generation to the other. And that's what we are discovering, that Bethany Land Institute itself becomes institutionalized in such a way that the young people that are trained are not only given capacity to develop their own farms, but they are given capacity to be masters of their own history. So we are learning all these along the way. And so there is a sense of journey into an unknown, a sense of really adventure. So that's another key lesson that I'm learning from this program, this initiative, confirming that Laudato Si, integral ecology, is not a product, but all we can say is an invitation to enact something like integral ecology. The third lesson I'm learning in this work, the second one was working together, creation and the poor. The second was the journey of integral ecology. The third is the sense of listening, how listening is so essential to the work that we're doing. That is why we're calling the key program, which is Mary's Farm, Mary's Farm. Mary, the disciple who sat down at Jesus' feet and listened. What we are leaning into What we are trying to get at is the Pope's invitation to say that all human relationships are grounded in a threefold relationship. Relationship with God, relationship with one another, and relationship with the community. The kind of listening that we are encouraging in the process of teaching agricultural skills, ecological care, the kind of skills is a kind of attentiveness to God, to oneself, to one another, and to the whole of creation. So listening as a key dimension of that process. And finally, a sense of synodality that emerges with learning to walk with, not only walk with the poor, walk with the creation, but also we are learning what it means to walk with the church and as a church. We are very much encouraged that 3 months into the start of the initiative, Bethany Land Institute, the bishop of the Diocese of Luwero decided to send all the seminarians of the diocese to come and work with the young people from the rural communities for 4 months as they are learning Laudato Si, as they are learning integral ecology, and as they are learning skills of sustainable agriculture. That bishop is now the archbishop and has mentioned that he will also be sending seminarians and pastoral agents from the archdiocese. And from the recent bishops' conference, but also AMESEA, I've received a message that the bishops in Uganda are more interested now to connect more to a program like Bethany Land Institute to see how the whole church in Uganda and perhaps beyond Uganda becomes a synodal church by listening to the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. These are some of the lessons that we are learning in the process of this work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emmanuel. We had a heavy lunch, but I think we are still awake because we helped him to finish that word. Yes. Thank you so much, Emmanuel, again. Where God is at work amongst us, I think it has come out very clearly. We'll spare you for some further discussion later. At this point, I would like to invite Sister Angelique Namaika from Congo, and she's going to talk to us about the smile of God. She's a founder of a congregation, and she is also involved in service to the orphans in the community. Sister, you have the chance. Would you like to speak for me? Yes. Yeah, she's going to speak in French, so if we can get the systems going. Thank you.
Mes excellents Monseigneur évêque, Messeigneur évêque, chers révérends abbés, coordinateurs de ces congrès, chers participants et participantes, bon après-midi. Il m'a été demandé de partager avec vous mes expériences du début de l'apostolat des plus pauvres, disons plus vulnérables, et la fondation de l'association Pièce de la Bienheureuse Anuarite de Compassion. Mon exposé de cet après-midi est divisé en 6 parties. Premièrement, je vais parler de moi-même, mon histoire. Je vais parler de motivation. Qu'est-ce qui m'a motivé pour me donner à cet apostolat? Je vais parler de l'expérience avec les enfants orphelins. Je vais parler aussi des difficultés rencontrées pendant cet apostolat. Et 5e, je vais parler de la fondation de l'association Pièce de la Bienheureuse Anuarite de Compassion. Et enfin, sera la conclusion. En ce qui me concerne, je m'appelle Sœur Angélique Namaïka. Je suis congolaise, résidente à Dungu, dans le diocèse de Dungu-Doruma. J'ai eu la vocation de devenir religieuse à 3e année primaire, à partir du travail d'une religieuse allemande du nom de Sœur Ton, qui travaillait auprès des malades. Et en 1992, j'avais émis mes premiers vœux. À l'an 2000, j'avais émis les vœux perpétuels. Et le 30 novembre 2020, j'avais émis mes vœux dans l'association Pièce de la Bienheureuse Anouarite de Compassion. 2. Motivation. Qu'est-ce qui m'a motivé pour me donner à l'apostolat des plus pauvres et d'aller jusqu'à ouvrir l'association Pièce pour la prise en charge de ces plus vulnérables? Pendant la formation à la vie religieuse, je m'étais rencontré avec 2 passages bibliques. Premièrement, là où Jésus nous dit: à chaque fois que vous avez fait au plus petit de mes frères entre vous, c'est à moi que vous l'aurez fait. Deuxièmement, Jésus est passé partout en faisant le bien. Il n'avait pas le temps de manger ni de se reposer. Avec ces 2 passages, personne d'autre ou quelque chose d'autre pourrait me dire le contraire. C'est ce qui m'a poussé à me donner à ce travail. Car à chaque fois que j'ai travaillé pour les plus pauvres, je voyais dans le visage de ces plus pauvres Jésus lui-même qui reçoit mon service. Troisièmement, expérience avec les orphelins. C'est en 2009 que j'avais reçu le premier orphelin, avec 1000 difficultés intérieurement. C'était comme une discussion entre moi et la volonté de Dieu. Pourquoi cette discussion, que j'appelle toujours combat spirituel? Premièrement, c'était pendant la période de guerre de la LRA dans notre côté. Je me demandais, un enfant de 3 semaines, si je le prends maintenant, nous sommes à tout le temps dans la course de la brousse. Je n'ai pas d'argent. Je ne trouverai pas de lin là-bas pour donner à l'enfant. Je ne peux pas prendre l'enfant. Et finalement, Dieu a triomphé. J'ai pris la décision de m'engager malgré ces difficultés. Deuxièmement, avec le deuxième enfant, je voulais aussi refuser parce que je devrais faire l'expérience d'exclustration à la maison, dans la famille, selon le droit canon. Mais un autre enfant qui m'arrive, je le repousse. Et après, la nuit, je n'ai pas eu la tranquillité de ma conscience. La conscience qui me dira, tu veux aller seulement te reposer, je te demande le service, tu ne veux pas m'aider. Et finalement, le matin, je décide encore de prendre cet enfant. Voilà comment le début d'expérience de prendre cette décision d'être avec les plus démunis. 4. Difficultés rencontrées dans ce travail. Première difficulté, quand j'avais accueilli le premier enfant, ce n'était pas bien accueilli dans la communauté parce que ça bouleversait l'horreur de la communauté. Et moi, personnellement, je n'étais reproché à aucune chose, car je me disais que j'aide le Seigneur et j'ai fait la volonté du Seigneur. Si tel est le cas, je vais demander l'exclustration pour voir si vraiment Dieu veut que je puisse le servir de cette manière. 1. Qu'est-ce qui me prouvera que réellement Dieu m'appelle? Si ces pauvres, ces enfants orphelins continueront à venir chez moi, même si je ne suis pas au couvent. 2. Si je ne perds pas ma joie, je saurai que Dieu m'appelle pour ce travail. Dans le cas contraire, je vais rejoindre mes concerts pour continuer la vie. Et deuxième difficulté, la communauté n'avait pas bien accueilli parce qu'il me trouvait dans la souffrance énorme par rapport à ce que j'étais avec les concerts. Parce que je me débrouillais à tout moment pour faire vivre ces enfants et moi-même. Il fallait construire, faire tout ce qu'on peut faire à la maison. Personne n'était content de cela. Et il y avait toujours des conseils de regagner les couvents parce que je n'étais pas bien. Et à chaque fois, je leur disais que n'empêchons pas la volonté de Dieu à cause de la souffrance. Laissons-les faire ce qu'ils veulent faire. Et vu cette difficulté, ce rejet de la communauté de ma part, il m'arrivait des fois à pleurer parce que personne ne m'aimait avec tout ce que je faisais. Une fois pendant ces pleurs-là, j'avais écouté une voix intérieure qui me disait « Même si tout le monde t'abandonne, moi je ne t'abandonnerai jamais. » J'ai dit, après cela, cette voix, « Merci Seigneur pour m'aimer continuellement. Mais une chose je vous demande, de faire savoir à la communauté que ce que je suis en train de faire, c'est ta volonté, parce qu'ils ne comprennent pas. C'est une nouveauté dans notre milieu. Aide-moi personnellement de ne jamais me décourager. » Voilà les difficultés que j'avais rencontrées parmi tant d'autres, parce qu'il y a peu de temps, ce sont des choses que j'ai vécues déjà pendant 12 ans. Et 5e point, fondation de l'association Pièce de la Bienheureuse Anuarite de Compassion. Pourquoi j'ai commencé cela? Une fois, j'étais en train de méditer et réfléchir sur l'avenir des enfants orphelins. Quand s'il m'arrivait la mort brusque ou bien la vieillesse, je ne peux plus me débrouiller pour eux, ou une maladie longue, quel serait le sort de ces enfants? Je me suis dit, il faut commencer une association pièce qui va aboutir à une congrégation. Parce qu'avec les sœurs, les enfants pourront avoir des mères comme j'étais avec eux. Parce que les gens viennent pour chercher quelque chose. S'il n'y a plus, c'est quelque chose qui va soutenir les enfants. Aurait-il parmi les chrétiens des personnes de bonne volonté, pendant que je suis dans les cercueils, ils viendront prendre les enfants? Des mamans légionnaires, avec ces questions, je n'ai pas trouvé la bonne réponse. C'est pourquoi j'ai demandé que le Seigneur m'aide à commencer cette congrégation, cette association pièce. Pour savoir si Dieu veut cela, comment je vais savoir qu'il veut que je commence une congrégation? Je n'avais pas une idée. Et après, j'ai mis ça dans la prière à l'intention de la bienheureuse sœur Anuarite. Parce que l'Église nous a demandé de prier à son nom pour que Dieu fasse des miracles pour sa canonisation. Et j'ai dit, moi, je vais prier pour cette situation et la situation de misère que nous menons avec les enfants. Que Dieu, à travers elle, puisse nous donner des personnes de bonne volonté pour nous soutenir dans cet apostolat des enfants. Et après, je suis allé à la maison Blé à Isiro, là où j'ai pris 8 jours pour prier à cette intention. J'ai prié pour des intentions, avoir des donateurs pour nous soutenir et aussi commencer cette association pièce pour l'avenir des enfants. Je ne savais pas comment il va me dire ça. Et après, j'ai demandé, j'ai mis en secret l'évêque de notre diocèse, que tout ce qu'il dira, c'est la volonté de Dieu qu'il va me communiquer et c'est ce que je vais faire. J'ai laissé ça. Après 6 ans, je vais lui partager. Je dis, mon Seigneur, personne n'accepte ce que je fais. Tout le monde est contre de ce que je fais. Il me conseille toujours de regagner le couvent. À part mon père qui est d'accord avec. Si tel est le cas, je ne sais pas, je dois regagner alors le couvent, mais je regrette les enfants. l'évêque va me dire, tu dois faire ce que tu ressens dans ton cœur, parce que c'est toi qui vas vivre cela toute ta vie. Il ajouta encore, plusieurs fois, tu me partages les problèmes des vulnérables et je te vois toujours auprès des vulnérables travailler. Tu dois continuer ce travail jusqu'au bout. Et quand il m'a dit cela, j'ai dit que le Seigneur veut que je commence l'association Pièce. Et j'ai commencé les démarches auprès des canonistes. Ils m'ont emmené, ils m'ont montré comment on commence cette association Pièce. Et voilà, aujourd'hui, nous avons deux postulantes qui avaient fait leur entrée en septembre dernier et nous avons 6 aspirantes. Nous avons eu la congrégation des sœurs dominicaines du Siro-Niangara pour nous accompagner car elles sont rodées dans ce travail. Pour conclure, l'appel de Dieu, on répond à l'appel de Dieu chaque jour, sans cesse. Car c'est cet appel-là ne manque pas de difficultés. Il y a toujours des difficultés. Car lui-même a dit, dans le monde, vous aurez à souffrir, mais ayez du courage. Moi, j'ai vécu le monde. Je dis et je vous remercie pour votre attention.
Thank you very much, sister, for sharing your experience. Before we go to the next speaker, could we please just stand up? Look at the person next to you and tell them that they are God's piece of work. Tell them something good about themselves. Okay. Shall we sit down now? Thank you very much. Yes, our theme this afternoon is where God is at work among us. We ourselves are God's piece of work. And I'm sure all of us have been complimented. You looked at somebody, maybe you don't know their name, maybe you like something about them. I could see some of us had started praying really hard. So if you see your neighbor praying, just tell them they are God's piece of work and they'll be up. Now, number 3 in the order in which we mentioned that number 2 in the program and number 3 are not here. We have done number 1, number 4. Now we are going to Rosemary Nirombe from Uganda. And she also has something to tell us about where God is at work in her life. She works with women who have been abused by the rebels in Uganda, and also school dropouts. I'm a teacher by training. That word makes me very uncomfortable. Dropout, but that's exactly what it is. And then she also runs a vocational school. Sister Rosemary, the time is yours now. About 15 minutes so that we have a little time for discussion. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's so difficult to listen to speakers after lunch, and I think you need to know it's also difficult to speak after lunch. but I'll try my best. I'm called Sister Rosemary Nirombe, and I like to emphasize the last name. Nirombe means women are invisible. And I didn't know about that for a long time. I started doing the work I'm doing, which I will talk to you about now, which exactly represents my name. And I think now I love it in that way. I am the director of Sowing Hope programs, which started with the St. Monica Girls Training School, a vocational school in northern Uganda, which has served so many women for over 20 years. I was sent to this school when I didn't know where I was going. I only had to obey. I tried to follow that vow of obedience. And when I went, I almost had a diminished faith because I did not know with who I was going to work. I didn't know the background of people I'm going to work with. And at the same time, I knew their background, which was quite scary. The reason why it was scary is that it was in the middle of the war of the Lord's Resistance Army, where so many young women and children were being abducted and abused. And it was a period where we had so many children who were being called by international community the night commuters. These children would all come and hide in our centers. But I put attention on the girls who were abducted, taken by rebels, sexually assaulted, and trained to become child soldiers. Some of these girls who managed to escape to come back home did not find where to settle, did not find who to fall back on, because the rebels used the tactics of taking these girls, and before they could even escape or think of even escaping, they would bring them back home as young as they were, force them to commit atrocities, kill some of their siblings and parents. And in that way, the community got really, really scared of these children. And that's exactly where my own fear also came from, when I came to know the background of these girls. But I took a challenge of faith and said, I need to accept these girls as they are in their condition. I need to make sure that I can be part of that rehabilitation, of mending their life, of mending their broken pieces. And that is why our program is called Sowing Hope Now, because we are trying to instill hope in these girls whose life was shattered. We are trying to train these girls to sew, literally using the analogy of a needle and sewing machine, just because the rebels trained these girls to destroy life with machine guns. We are training these girls to use sewing machines to mend broken pieces, to mend clothes, and also mend their own broken lives. And in this way, we think that the girls will understand that, much as they themselves were discarded by the community, much as people thought they were useless, they are now ministering to the community again by providing what people would need most. The skills training we provide for these girls is all what we think could help them become self-sustaining, become self-reliant in the community one day. It is a challenge on our side to help these women, and we should be able to present them to the community to tell them that they are ready to stand on their own. They are not going to rely on you. And one of the uniqueness of this program has been that acceptance of these girls with their children, and also in their condition, knowing very well that this is a Catholic-founded school. This is a school which is the only one taking girls who have children, taking girls who are pregnant and helping them through the pregnancy. Then we send them, say, go and give birth safely. If your child turns 1 year, you can come back to us and we train you. It was a challenge for me because even within the church, there were people who were not comfortable with what I was doing, with what I started. They were not happy that we are bringing girls who are pregnant, or girls who were raped, or girls who had a terrible background. They were calling them returnees. I said, they are not returnees. They have come back home. They have come back in their community. And their children were being pointed at, say, these are children of the rebels. And I had always to stand up to defend and say, these children are not rebels themselves. They are innocent. And we have to integrate them in the community again. So those were the challenges which made me almost to have diminished faith within the same church. But from that point of where you can have a diminished faith, I drew strength from my own congregation, where the sisters themselves did not want in the beginning to even align with this work, but I remained steadfast and continued to the point that instead of me being transferred, I asked the superior to keep me there. I said, let me be here, because I knew it was a situation which was scaring everybody. And so my presence, my being there, my insistence has made me, together with the sisters who were sent later, to look exactly and see where we can align that work we are doing with our own charism. That is the charism of taking care of the poor, taking care of refugees, taking care of orphans. And I kept on emphasizing, sisters, we are a congregation which was founded in South Sudan, and we only came to Uganda as a refugee congregation. And so it is right and fitting that we take care of the refugees wherever we are. I still recall one time I proposed in one of our chapters how we can take care of girls who are being trafficked, and especially prostitutes. My sisters all were not comfortable about hearing the word prostitutes. They said, you are bringing something new, which we have never done. And I told them, I said, let me make it simple. What about if you go out and find that prostitute is your sister, or is a relative of yours? Would you not take care? And I found little by little, by being there, by insisting, my sisters, my congregation has embraced the work I'm doing, and we are now so many, and we've founded a new satellite program in Atiag, where we have built an orphanage, a primary school, and a health center, where the sisters are running independently without me even being there. There, I think, I can see the work of God. I can see that we are moving and including the most forgotten people, especially in northern Uganda. And when I talk about St. Monica and Sowing Hope, many people ask me and say, you have been talking about girls who are taken by rebels, but the war has stopped. And my answer is always, the war has stopped, but the impact of war has remained. Guns are not heard anymore in northern Uganda, but a lot of people still hear the sound of guns in their hearts. So what is our role as a church? What is our role as a faith community? What is our role as women religious who are supposed to be mothers to these people? I think it is important for us to be able to listen to their inner voices. And with that, I realized every year in the Archdiocese of Gulu, we always hold what we call a peace conference. And we get a lot of people coming to that peace conference every year. And one day I noticed that in this peace conference, there is lack of inclusion of voices of the most vulnerable women and girls. And I'm referring to the girls I talked to you about. And I question myself, because this conference is taking place right in the very center where we are, and nobody has even asked me to call one of these girls to come and give a testimony or to talk how she could become a peace builder in her community. And that made me angry, I'm sorry to say. But I decided to console myself by saying, I'm going to turn my anger into action. I called the next year a group of women who are living in the periphery, which Pope Francis talked about. I called them and say, let us start a peace conference for women. And I got a group of women of Karamoja. If some of you know about Uganda, you know Karamoja is the most isolated place. I got women from refugees camp from South Sudan. They came to this conference. I got women living with the HIV/AIDS. I got women who are formerly abducted. They come together. Now, every year, we have what we call peace conference. And this year, we just had it in June. We have fixed a date that every June we shall hold this conference. And we have extended our invitation already to women from Congo who came to this conference last June. And we extended the invitation to South Sudan, which we wanted women to come, but maybe they got it late. And next year we hope to have them. But the most important theme I found this time, which women discussed, was that all of them complain that their voices are not being heard, even in the church. And they discussed a lot about gender-based violence in their community and what should be done. What is their role as families, as society, as women, and as communities. And they said, we would discuss this for a long time, but we would like eventually to have some men among us. I was a little bit opposed to that, but I realized it was a good idea. So we tried to package it in a very smart way, which is a bit acceptable. I said, we are going to bring men who are gender sensitive only. Yes, and not only that, don't laugh too early. The men who come, we told them, your role is only to listen. Because the women have listened for a long time. The women have taken advice from you men also for a long time. Now you need to listen to us. So that's what we are doing every year. We shall bring gender-sensitive men. Next time I will propose that some people from this conference can come and join and listen. Bishops too. Bishop Iporo is the first one I will invite. Gender-sensitive, and you come and listen. And with this program, you may ask, are we doing same thing every year? No. We have moved on with these women to find new programs. And this time I started what we call learn and earn. That means you come with your child, you are learning, you are going to be given some skills where you can produce something, but you will be paid for what you are producing while you are learning at the same time. This is to encourage these women to learn, to get into literacy and become more self-sustaining, more self-reliant, to take care of their own children. But above all, I want to help them to get their identity in the community, to be more accepted in the community. Because one thing which I realized, I carried out a research that most of the women have got some kind of twisted identity just because they know that people call them former abducted, people who are illiterate, people who dropped out of school. And I started thinking, just as you said, which school did they drop out of? Why are they being called school dropouts? Then why are they being called illiterate? Who is defining the word illiterate and literate? Why? Those two binaries, we're just putting them to discuss, to extend our discussion. There's nobody who is literate or illiterate. We need to change the word. It doesn't exist also in my culture, in my language. So I decided to say, okay, let us do one thing. Let us pick from your knowledge, from the indigenous knowledge. Bring that knowledge out, the knowledge which you got from your childhood. Let's emphasize on that. And even if we are introducing literacy, it must be literacy along that line of your indigenous knowledge. in your language and in your culture. This is the new project we are running with these women, and I hope it will continue. And for me, I think it is the most important thing because we are including the voices of the voiceless. They are not really voiceless, but the world has considered them as voiceless. And of course, not only that, we are including their voices. I'm still struggling that these voices should be brought even to the bigger table of academia. Actually, when I was invited to this conference, I would have twisted, I would have made more problems by saying, can I bring some of my girls to speak in this conference? Can I bring them next time to tell them what God means for them in their life? I hope this can happen one day. Thank you so much. I'm not going to go far. Before you close, before I conclude, I want to tell you that the Sowing Hope program, you can read about it on sowinghope.com. You will get my book, Sowing Hope, and another one also, Sowing Hope. There are two books, and there is that book also translated in Italian, Cucire la Speranza. And the third book is going to come, Mending Broken Lives. And if you want to know why and what we do with Sowing Hope, some of you have been seeing me moving with a bag. It's a beautiful bag. You think I'm a model. I'm not modeling. I'm speaking with that bag. That bag is telling you that that is Sowing Hope, made by these women from collection of trash, from collection of tins of soda, and we make those beautiful purses in order to tell you that we can mend the broken of lives of these girls again to become beautiful like that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sister Rosemary. Where is that bag? I think it would be good for us to see it. Yes, can somebody just lift it? Let's give a clap. Getting something out of nothing. Yes. Bottle caps. I don't want to say more. For me, it's a moment of reflection, hearing from our three colleagues on where God is at work amongst them, amongst us. I'd like to open it up for any interventions. We have about 20 minutes to do that. Yes, I see a hand there. Could somebody pass the mic? Oh, there are very many hands, so I think I'll stand so that I give numbers for ease of management. Okay, let me just give numbers. You are number 1, in the middle here, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6. Let's handle those for the beginning. Thank you.
I enjoyed the 3 presentations, and inspired by Sister Rosemary's presentation, I'm directing my question to Father Emmanuel, who focused his presentation on integral ecology. For me, without gender balance, there can be no integral ecology. And I want to ask you if you would be willing to explain how much women or females are included in your Bethany program, because I heard you saying that seminarians are being mobilized to go and teach people. Are females also included to go and in whatsoever? Thank you.
Yes, we just want to hear these contributions that are going to add to where God is at work in our lives. Not questions as such, so I just wanted to make that clarification. So can we have number 2? But at the end, if there's any point you want to respond to, we'll give you that chance. Okay, number 2 was who?
So I really thank and appreciate the presenters it was really wonderful. But my contribution to them, they wanted to contribute to Professor Emmanuel Katongole, especially on the issue of the listening to the soil. And currently, for sure, that is really relevant to our societies today. And the way we are connected to the earth is because through that we are human beings. And in that way, currently, there are so many challenges in the area of agriculture. And in that way, the challenge of genetically modified organisms, and also the way they are connected to our lives, and the effects which are coming out now currently. I hope also you integrate them in your program. It would be so enriching. In Uganda, I don't know so much how the issues of genetically modified organisms are so exposed there. But I think here in this country, and sometimes also, in my country, in Tanzania, they are so much, they are so rampant. And they also need also to be taken into attention and how they are affecting not only the earth, but also through eating them, they are also affecting our health as human beings. So I think that will be a very good, contribution into that. Thank you so much.
Okay, number 3.
Thank you. This is Carlos Mendoza from Mexico. I'm teaching at Boston College in the US. Thank you so much for the 3 narratives that you presented. I would like to make a short comment and a question. The comment is, how can we decolonize the idea of synodality? Because the title of our Congress is Walking Together for a Vital Church for Africa and the World. It's obviously, we are located in the church, but trying to discuss and dialogue and a kind of collaboration with the world. So we used to talk about synodality in a very ecclesiastical way. We could expand the idea of synodality trying to connect with other people, social movements. And I know there is a paper will be presented later about the synodality with civil society. I think this is a very interesting path to follow. How can we understand working together not only as churches, but with civil society? And my question is, for the 3 of you, if you want to just make a comment, in your personal experience, in your institutions, your projects, your initiatives, are there some collaboration with civil society outside the church? How this kind of collaboration is enriching in some way your own perspective? It's translated into French? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
En français, je suis Béatrice Faye du Sénégal, en mission au Burkina Faso. J'apprécie beaucoup les 3 expériences que nous venons d'entendre, mais je voulais interpeller un peu par rapport au thème majeur de la session, au moins cette première session, concernant la synodalité. Et je voudrais peut-être demander à nos intervenants de voir comment intégrer ces différentes expériences qui sont valorisées dans le processus synodal, comment ces expériences traduisent ce que le pape appelle la décentralisation salutaire au niveau de l'Église. Je m'explique. Pour le pape, l'Église doit se décentraliser pour son salut, entre guillemets. C'est-à-dire la valorisation des églises particulières. Et je vois à travers vos expériences que nous devons chercher à valoriser de plus en plus ces
parle en français, donc je voudrais me permettre d'être un problème ou être une problématique pour nous tous. Je mesure la pertinence du déploiement de la synodalité en contexte de pauvreté, d'écologie et de vulnérabilité du genre. Alors la question fondamentale que je me pose, quelle serait réellement la problématique de la synodalité? Est-ce que nous nous inclinons vers une synodalité activiste ou une synodalité essentielle qui est à l'épreuve de l'identité de l'homme et de l'identité de l'Église elle? Voilà ma problématique. Merci.
I have two questions. The first one goes to Father Emmanuel. On integral ecology, we had recently the plenary of bishops over Messiah on the same theme. And the challenge we had was the poverty that has stricken among people forces them to use firewood, charcoal, and the like. Now, we often condemn their use of this energy, but fail to provide alternative sources of energy. Would you assist us to give credible and user-friendly sources of energy that could assist the poor as an alternative means of living? Secondly, I have a question to Sister Rosemary. I liked your presentation. It's really coming to heart. I've been working on a document, chaplaincy, for various groups of people in the church to assist the region. And when I came to think of accompaniment of prostitutes, it became a challenge because even bishops had difficulties to swallow that idea. So I did not include it, waiting for the opportune moment when it could be understood, because they could also misunderstand me. Now, there is a certain group of people that need help, but you don't see them in the open, like those involved in human trafficking. They need their lives to be shown or to be repaired. How would you assist such people who are affected by the happenings of the world, and yet the work is hidden, or their actions are done in a hidden manner? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair, for the... It was supposed to go up, but now that I have it. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity, and thank you, panelists, for great presentations. I think I stand up to thank the organizers for this session. This has been my best session, and I think going forward it will remain the best session. Why the best session? Because I'm passionate about translating research into practical development. And sorry to say this when I'm speaking in the crowds of Christian University and in front of many members of the clergy and many Christians, but the church for me in Africa has been a disappointment. I believe that the church is the single major institution that has the capacity to transform our continent, but we have not exploited that potential. We continue to comment, we are commentators, we continue to observe, we are observers. Sometimes we continue to accompany, walk with, in the wrong direction. Walk probably with politicians into the wrong direction, and we forget our mission. I think going forward it would be extremely exciting if we could be challenging ourselves as Christians, as church, whatever we define the church as, in terms of what is it we can do and what little things are happening around Africa, and what can we draw from them. Thank you, panelists, but I would like to ask or to comment and say, we probably want to think, and this relates to somebody who asked about decolonizing synodality, because this is what it has to do with. This is what it's got to do with it. When we look at those small things that we are doing, or big things that we are doing there with local communities, what lessons are we getting? I like the lessons that Professor Emmanuel Katongole brought out. And I think that's what we need more, so that we are not going to communities to take information, we are going to communities to draw lessons and learn from them as they learn from us. That is what walking each other home is about. Ultimately, we are all walking each other home. So as we walk each other home, we want to listen to each other rather than talk to the other. So I'm talking to the panelists and saying in our works, in those projects that we are doing, and we think more about what it is that we learn from these prostitutes. What is this that we are learning from the vulnerable, particularly in terms of their own self-empowerment, so that we are not talking about, I'm helping them, I'm helping. They really don't need to be helped. They just need to be facilitated to help themselves and help us. Help me understand how the church to which I belong can become a church of synodality right here in Africa and beyond. Thank you very much.
I want to speak to the idea of advocacy. First of all, thank you very much for your presentation.
Very insightful information from really deep down within the heart. But my thinking about helping people and starting projects, it's really what's the role of the government? Like my sister, the last speaker, spoke. What are we doing in terms of advocacy? Because I think it's enough for us to maybe start projects, get money from places, because I'm wondering, like, where do you get the money to take care of the orphans at the Sowing Hope place, even the Sustainable Land, Bethany Land Institute? We get money from somewhere. But do we really involve the government in this strategic thinking to begin to take responsibility for what's going on also in our lives in Africa? And that brings up us to synodality, to our own environment, to our own way of looking at it. Instead of looking at outside, looking for the West to give us some ideas or solve our problems, how can we begin to challenge ourselves as religious people, bishops, priests? What are we doing in terms of advocacy to really challenge our leaders? And that would sometimes cost us about our lives, but are we really ready to do that? Or should the people keep being disappointed? And those of us in the church sometimes we feel really disappointed that we are not doing enough to challenge and to advocate.
Thank you very much. I'll be very quick. I want to thank and highly commend our presenters for this session. That was really very inspiring. My comment goes to the presentation by Dr. Nirombe. Sister, I'm very pleased that you raised the question about indigenous knowledge and the literacy that is within indigenous knowledge and how it can help us, how we must seek to learn, how it can help us to to become more relevant and to be more articulate on our mission and the mission of the church. And I want to request those of us that are in philosophy, theology as well, to really pay attention to the African epistemology, because we tend to frame our ways of knowledge from a point of reference that is alien to us. And when that is always the dominant way to look at our knowledge, and yet our people have a lot to say about where we ought to go in theology, in philosophy, and indeed in every possible expression. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to the whole panel. I was very struck by the way that both the religious sisters on the panel had to struggle with their own communities in order to carry out ministries that seemed to me very obvious for women religious, working with girls, working with orphans. And I think it points to a central dysfunction in the institutions of the church. And maybe when we face this resistance, we know we're really on track to decolonizing synodality. I'm sympathetic with the desire to get governments to shift. But if we are called to leave behind mother and father, sister and brother, to follow Christ, that may also mean parting company at times with our elected or seemingly elected governments. So, and I'm very grateful to Sister Angélique for sharing her internal spiritual struggle, because I think that discernment so Sister Rosemary and Sister Emmanuel have had similar struggles, and I thank you for what you've done and how it encourages and inspires the rest of us.
Yeah, we want to thank you for all the interventions. Time is not on our side. So I'd like Sister Emmanuel to, in that order, then Sister here and Sister Angelique, just to give their final shot on what we have had this afternoon.
Thank you very much, my fellow sisters.
I'm very happy to be counted among the general group
of fellow sisters. Instead of responding to a number of questions that have been raised, let me tell briefly 4 quick stories. I think that will help us to get a sense of how a focus on ecology and the environment, on land particularly, helps to redefine a number of things, including the very identity of the church, what the church is called to be, our own identity, but also different dimensions of healing, including the reshaping of gender dynamics, religious dynamics as well. Immaculate is a 21-year-old girl in the program at BLI. She was brought into the program this year by her sister, who was among the first cohort, her sister, 2 of 14 people, 2 girls in the first cohort. She liked the program enough and went and called her sister, but just finished senior 4, and who wanted to be a lawyer, to come and see. She came to the program. Now she's 6 months into the program, Immaculate, and meeting with her and her other colleagues, caretakers, and now there are more actually women in the program. I asked her, so you wanted to be a lawyer? Would you want now to get a chance and go back? She said, no way. Because what I've discovered here is a sense of my own worth, my own identity, and I have the confidence, even if it means now to go and speak in the Prime Minister's office, I am able to go to do so. And this all in the process of caring for the earth and working together with the others. Yunus is a 19-year-old Muslim boy. There are 3 Muslims in the program who presented, when his turn came, on Laudato Si. And he said, I'm very grateful for the Pope who issued this letter, because it really shows us what we need to do. Yunus, don't want to call him a school dropout, but he finished P7, and now he is going to plant his own forest at home when he graduates next January. But the energy that he shows, but also the appreciation that he shows as one of the 3 Muslims in the community. An appreciation, for example, of the document of Laudato Si, but also the appreciation of the stories from Bethany, of Lazarus, of Martha. She's not taking them as a kind of way, oh, this is buying into Catholic theology. She's just realizing the significance of these stories and how the stories draw us into a fresh imagination of what it means to be someone here in Africa. The third story is about the seminarians. When the seminarians were asked by the bishop to come into the program, that was during COVID, and they were all back at home. And the bishop saw that they were just there at the parishes and the program had started, and he said, you should go to Bethany Land Institute and be part of the program. I can assure you, they came kicking and screaming. What are you doing? For God's sake, we are seminarians of the Holy Catholic Church. We are reverend seminarians. We have our masters in philosophy, in theology. You want us to work with the peasants, with these young people, some of them P7? No way. But because they had to obey the bishop, they came. They spent 4 months. When the time came to leave, they did not want to leave. At the beginning of the program, they all would wake up, put on their cassocks, go to Mass at 6:30, come out of Mass, and ring around in their cassocks. The director told them, Mass is 6:30, 7:15, everyone in the field in overalls. And so they started working with the soil, with these illiterate, sorry, the term, unlettered young boys and girls and so forth. But the friendship, the learning, and the appreciation of what it means to till the earth, to care for the soil, to have their nails dirty in the soil, has been so transformative for them, talking to them. And what they are doing now back in the seminary, they are forming their fellow seminarians into groups that are going out into the community, into near the slums of Kampala, educating others to take care of plastics, and they are all dreaming about their ordination in terms of what they are going to do at their parish, working with the local community. I think that is very significant. That is redefining even synodality in the process of also redefining of what it means to be a seminarian, of what it means to be church, especially in a poor context like Africa. The final story is about the ecology and the forest. When we started to work on the forest and inviting the local community also, one of the things that we are learning more and more, what we are doing actually is very much at home with the African traditional spirituality of the tree is not just needed for its wood. There is something sacred about a tree. And so we are learning all these, and a deep affinity and connection with the African traditional indigenous native ways. I find this kind of work is in a way an opportunity for a new engagement with African traditional native spiritualities. But all this is happening in the very concrete process of working with the earth and working with the poor. So the more we do so, I feel, the more this is going to invite us in a new identity and a new vision of what it means to be a church in Africa. Thank you very much.
I just wanted to comment a little bit about somebody's question about collaboration with the civil society. I think we, maybe the church, we are really scared of challenging our lawmakers and policy makers. I can just give a simple example of all what we presented here, especially Sister Katongole and me. We did not mention anything that we even went and challenged our lawmakers. That is a sign that it is not actually us, it is the weakness of the institution, the church. We are not brought up to challenge. We are not brought up to go to them and tell them what we are doing. Actually, our governments may not know what we are doing. I don't know if they know what you are doing.
The Prime Minister is the guest of honor on the 29th of July.
That is still coming, but you have been doing a lot of things. He has been doing a lot of things. I knew him for a long time. I have been doing a lot of things. And I have only just presented my strategic paper, what I have told to you, to the minister, going to present it to the cabinet only this time. So that I'm not going to blame myself. I'm blaming the church who brought me up in that way. Then someone talked about human trafficking and other things which are done in private and so forth. I want to tell you, when I was coming for this very Congress in the airport, Entebbe, I met a group of young women who were all dressed like Muslims, but they are not Muslims. They were being taken officially to Arab countries to work in quotes. That is official human trafficking. And I thought, I said, what have we done to contest that? I saw these women going in front of me, and I started grumbling and talking. Luckily enough, the woman who was behind me was a member of parliament. She picked up and said, "Sister, you are right. These girls are sent, and they're not working, but they're being used by people there." Then I said, they're turning them into prostitutes. What have you done in the parliament? Take that in parliament, and we talk about it. And that is something, I think human trafficking is really not done in private. Even prostitution is not, there is someone behind that who is supporting that. And so it is our work to challenge that openly. Maybe we fear too much to risk, taking that risk on ourselves. And maybe we fear our identity also, that we may talk and people may judge us. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup pour vos questions et ajouts. Je voudrais parler pour la sœur qui avait parlé de solidarité entre l'Église. Je vais dire pour la sœur, ça existe. Si je suis venue ici, c'est grâce à cette solidarité. Je ne connais pas l'abbé Stanislas. Il vit en Amérique. Je ne l'ai jamais vu et je n'ai jamais écouté parler de lui. Lui, par son jugement, ses recherches, je ne sais pas comment il a appris que nous avons commencé l'association Pièce, parce que je n'ai jamais parlé de cela ailleurs, à part ici où j'étais parti, de 110 km de chez nous. C'est une manière de penser à nos travaux. Le fait de m'appeler pour partager avec plusieurs personnes qui sont ici, c'est déjà une contribution de l'Église pour notre travail. Il y avait des discussions. Il m'avait donné l'invitation depuis décembre 2021. J'ai dit, très loin comme ça, vous pensez que je vais arriver à cette date que vous avez fixée? Il a dit, ma sœur, ayez la foi. Et je lui ai dit, je n'ai pas d'argent pour me déplacer jusqu'ici. Il m'a encouragé, il a insisté et je vois qu'il y a de la collaboration entre nous. Je voudrais dire aussi pour le gouvernement, à chaque fois je présente cela. Je dis d'ailleurs ce travail que nous sommes en train de faire, c'est votre travail. Ailleurs, je vois le gouvernement qui donne aux sœurs l'endroit, la maison pour aider ses enfants. À chaque fois, il amène à manger pour les enfants. J'espère qu'un jour, ça va se faire dans notre pays et surtout dans les coins de notre pays où nous sommes. Avant que je vienne, j'avais eu le coup de téléphone d'un abbé qui me disait, ma sœur, est-ce que tu sais qu'il y a des documents à remplir ici, envoyés par le gouvernement pour la prise en charge de l'orphelinat, de tous les orphelinats du Congo? J'ai dit, ah bon, c'est une bonne nouvelle. Si je reviens, je vais prendre contact de ces documents. Nous poussons cela. Et comme la vie des enfants orphelins ou des vulnérables, c'est une vie comme la nôtre. C'est une vie qu'on doit nourrir chaque jour comme on nourrit la vie des autres. Ça demande continuellement les moyens. C'est pour cela que nous sommes tout le temps dans les besoins. Et je pense que ce qui pourra nous aider plus, ce sont des moyens d'autofinancement que nous pouvons s'en servir sans beaucoup de tracasseries. Merci.
Thank you very much to our panelists, to the contributions that we had. We are exiting this front and this table, but what I carry home with me is God at work and how is He working. And somebody raised the issue of what lessons. I hope that we leave this session wondering and thinking about the lessons that we have gathered this afternoon. Please give the panel a last clap as we exit. Thank you very much. Hand over to Sister Leonida. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Emmanuel, Sister Rose, Sister Angelique, and Sister Mary. And now you can leave those seats and proceed to the other side of the world. Thank you. We clap for them as they take their seats over this side. We'll have a moment. I think it's 5 or 7 minutes. 7 minutes. 4 minutes, yes. There's a message coming also from the Vatican, from Cardinal Gresh, that we have to listen to. And Gresh, yes. Bishop. Yeah, thank you. And then after which, I will give you the next instructions. Thank you. Yeah, actually he's in charge of the commission that is working or dealing with the synod. Thank you. Please, let's just stretch a bit from where you are. Just stand, we stretch a bit because I know it has been heavy and turn around and greet your friend. Just say hi, just say hi. Turn around and say hi to your friend. Hi. Turn around and just say hi. You are through? Thank you, we are ready, thank you.
My dear brothers and sisters,
you can be seated now, thank you, you can be seated now, thank you. Can we move? Back to the house. We want to save time. We have little time, so let's just get seated for us to follow up with that video. Thank you. Yes, we can go. Thank you. Proceed. Please, silence, please.
my dear brothers and sisters, it is a privilege and honor for me to have this possibility to address such a distinguished assembly. I wish I could have had the possibility to meet you personally, but in the circumstances, I'm going to share these few reflections in this recorded message. Well, according to Yves Congar, ecclesiology over the last 2 millennia can be divided into 2 distinct periods. The first millennium operated out of what he called the communio ecclesiology. Then the church of the second millennium shifted to operating out of a top-down ecclesiology, which he summarized as hierarchology. Today, I want to share my hope that in the wake of Vatican II and its reception by Pope Francis, historians will look back on the church of the third millennium as one characterized by an ecclesiology of synodality. Whether this will become the reality depends on how Vatican II and Pope Francis' conception of what it was envisaging becomes deeply embedded into the daily life and mission of the church. In this process of ongoing reception, you theologians, you will play a vital role. And this is my challenge to you today. The church in Africa, Madagascar, and the islands possesses significant resources to enrich and contribute to the process of synodality. The religious, cultural, philosophical traditions of Africa have such rich examples, resources, values, and practices that really can correlate with the concept of synodality. Dei Verbum, paragraph 8, teaches God, who spoke in the past, dialogues without interruption, sine intermissione colloquitur, with the spouse of his beloved Son, and the Holy Spirit, through whom the living voice of the gospel rings out to the church, leads believers to the full truth and makes the word of Christ dwell in them in all its richness. Now, reflecting on how the church can access this guidance of the Holy Spirit brings us to the very core of synodality, the means through which the Holy Spirit communicates and enlightens the church. Lumen Gentium 12 teaches that the conduit between the church and the Holy Spirit is through a special gift which this Holy Spirit gives to all baptized believers, the supernatural sensus fidei of the whole people. This is a gift given to all baptized individuals and to the church as a whole. The Spirit not only grants the gift of fides, but also a special gift for interpreting revelation, a sensus fidei. There is, however, a tension created through this gift from the Holy Spirit, an ecclesial tension, which is of the Spirit's making. This is the tension between an individual's sense of faith, sensus fidei fidelis, and the community of the faithful's sense of the faith, sensus fidei fidelium. This dynamic tension between individual and communal discernment characterizes the dynamism at work in what the Council calls the living tradition. Dei Verbum, paragraph 8, states that the tradition that comes from the apostles makes progress in the church with the help of the Holy Spirit. End of quote. It then speaks of three interrelated means through which the Holy Spirit works. Firstly, theological scholarship, the contemplation and study of believers who ponder these things in their hearts. Secondly, the sensus fidelium, the intimate sense of spiritual realities which believers experience. And thirdly, the episcopate, the preaching of those who, on succeeding to the episcopatus, have received the sure charism of truth. This sure charism of truth, when understood in the light of this whole paragraph, and indeed all of the Vatican II documents, presupposes the search for truth as a dialogue between all of the three interrelated ways in which the Spirit guides the Church: theological scholarship, the sensus fidelium, and the magisterium. Accordingly, Walter Gasper speaks of Vatican's II call for a new form of ecclesiality, orthodoxy through dialogue. And for Pope Francis, this new form of ecclesiality is best captured in the term synodality. In one sense, the Synod of Bishops is one way in which this threefold dialogue can occur between theological scholarship, that is, you theologians, the sensus fidelium, and the magisterium. Thus, for synodality to be received deeply into the life and mission of the Church, theological investigation and theological education into a synodal imagination is really needed. It is for this specific reason that I feel honored to address your assembly today. You African theologians, you have an important task and a vital contribution to make for the renewal of a synodal church. An African theology of synodality would be a lasting contribution to the development of a synodal church in the third millennium. Your African contribution in your continent can bring a solid contribution to the whole church. African bishops need your expertise in all the fields and areas of theological studies to deepen their understanding and practice of synodality. You may also place your expertise at the service of bishops to prepare for the next phase of the synodal process, the continental synodal assemblies. In this process of synodality, you also have an indispensable role to play in the subsequent phases of implementation and in ensuring that synodality really becomes a way of life which God expects of the church for the third millennium. For this to happen, your work as theologians entails studying and promoting the spirituality of journeying together, so that it becomes an educational principle for the formation of the human person and of the Christian, of the families, and of the communities. So, my brothers and sisters, I encourage you to develop formation programs in your respective institutions of higher learning for people, especially those who hold roles of responsibility within the Christian communities, to make them more capable of journeying together and to assimilate the cardinal principles of synodality, such as discernment, individual discernment, ecclesial discernment, listening to one another, and engaging in dialogue. The synodal spirit is alive in Africa. It is rooted in the diverse and enculturated ways of being church in local contexts. As stated in the vision of synodality rooted in an African ecclesial context, a document produced by the International Colloquium on Synodality that was convened in April 22, our contribution to the Synod on Synodality must include our African cultural values, expressed in terms like Ubuntu, Uyama, Baraza, Palaver, etc. Reverential dialogue that is inspired by the family spirit and related to nature, our ancestors, and the desired future for Africa. My dear brothers and sisters, thank you. Thank you for your love for Christ, for your love for His church, the universal church. You have a noble mission because theological reflection can explore the broad implications of a theology of synodality. But whatever the issues still to be explored, one thing is very clear from Pope Francis' vision. Conceiving the church in a synodal way brings to the fore the importance of listening to the lived faith of all the baptized, what the Verbum calls the intimate sense of spiritual realities which believers experience. This means that for theology to serve the mission of the church, it must be grounded in the sensus fidelium, the sense of the faith, the sense of the faithful, with all their joys and hopes, griefs and anxieties. And so I leave you with words Pope Francis has addressed to theologians. Do not settle for desktop theology. Your place for reflection is the frontier. Even good theologians, like good shepherds, have the order of the people and of the street, and by their reflection, they pour oil and wine unto the wounds of humanity. Theology is an expression of a church which is a field hospital, which lives her mission of salvation and healing in the world. I wish you luck in your journey, in your theological adventure. God bless you.
Yeah, best practices still speaking to us in the course of celebration of the synod, and more so in the discussions that we have now. So we'll have the concurrent sessions, and I had mentioned earlier on, but for the sake of those who are not there, we'll have 3 concurrent sessions. We'll have 3 concurrent sessions. The first session is led by Sister Florence Osho. Sister Florence, please just raise your hand. And you meet upstairs, the first floor there, up there, room 17. Room 17, sister, you can lead them there. The second group is led by Nora Nontera. You're meeting, Nora, please raise your hand. That's Nora. You are meeting room number 15. And the last group is under the leadership of Doris Van Gaal. Doris, yes, you remain here. And these sessions will run from, what time is it? Okay, let's pick from 1640 to, it's 1 hour actually, 1640 to 1540. Thank you. Then we come for the evening program. Thank you. Now you can proceed to your various groups.